Good evening, everybody. It's fantastic to be here to this very dynamic Green Monday event, which I've long admired, and to be able to talk to Jeremy. What a privilege. Now, just to run through the format again, we're going to talk for a little while, about 30 minutes or so. Let me just gauge, just put your hands up if you've come along with questions and you think, you're pretty confident you're going to want to ask a question. I'm not going to make you do it now. I just need to know whether you need more time. Good, brave person over there. Good, I'll remember that. We also have a couple of questions which were submitted by Twitter by people who can't be here tonight, so we'll pop those in as well. And good evening to anybody who's joining in on the webcast. We won't be taking your questions, but never mind. We're glad you're joining us. Now, I'm not going to introduce Jeremy again because Jim did such a great job, but I do just want to run through a few things that some of my colleagues from various publications have said about you. Okay. Genial, blokish, they mean that as a compliment, was that sort of publication. Very unsky, also meant as a compliment. Top flight guy, completely confident but without arrogance, unassuming, focused but pragmatic and phlegmatic. Hope you're not too phlegmatic this evening. Lots of nice things that I've read about you, but nowhere have I seen you described as being particularly passionate about green issues or a sort of de facto swampy. So I'd like to start on this Green Monday by just gauging where the environment sits with you. How important is it to you? We can see it's obviously one of the pillars of the bigger picture, but how important is it for you?
So I think it's incredibly important. I think it's something which, a lot of the ways you describe me, I would recognise and think are pretty true. I've got a young family. I think any of us who look outside at the world can see that the environment is going to become, a bigger issue and less predictable than we've ever seen before. And I have a core belief that Sky is a business, and I, as the leader of that business, can do our bit to affect that. Now, actually, as a business, we don't have a particularly big environmental footprint, and we've worked very hard on improving that, and we set some goals for ourselves that take us through to 2020. So, I think we're committed now on a course very publicly. And there's one thing you can say about Sky, which is when we set a goal, we like to hit it. But I think it's a really core, part of our whole sustainability program and approach, and it's a core part of, my leadership at Sky, my tenure at Sky, I think. But it's only part of it, and I think it's also important. I don't want our approach to sort of get ghettoised in one place. I think it can be much broader, and it should be much broader. And so I'm equally passionate about the work we're doing in schools, what we're doing with sport and the arts, trying to build skills and give people greater opportunity, because I think they all play an important part in what we do.
And what is it? What is it about bringing those things together? I write, I call it ethical living, so it's environmental and social justice. Why, for you, do they need to sit together? Are you trying to create better citizens? What is going on here?
Well, I think there are probably two motivations. I think if I start with the sort of perhaps the financial motivation, it has often seemed to me that if you look in the purest financial terms, what is the value of Sky as a company? And a core part of my job is to try and grow that over time. It's a combination of the size of our business at any time, the size of the cash flows, if you like, but also the tail and durability of those cash flows, right? And those two axes are both very important. And I would observe that I think too much of the narrative around corporations, and certainly the narrative around results, tends to be on how big we are at any point in time. We'll report our results in the next few weeks for the third quarter. I guarantee much of the debate will be how much have we grown quarter on quarter, what's happened to our financials. There'll be very short-term focus, and that's okay, that's legitimate, and it's right that we explain that. But I will probably get no question on what are we doing to sustain those over time. And actually, I think if you look at a lot of the really great businesses, they've understood that dynamic, and therefore they've worked on sustenance and the durability of their business model and their cash flows, and they've created a lot of value on the back of that. I think the second thing, though, is personal, right? It's a personal motivation. I think direction fundamentally comes from within. I would also observe that if I look at a lot of corporates, when the CEO changes or leadership moves on, that quite often a lot of what's done gets dismantled, and that's sort of was more than slightly depressing, I think. So at a personal level, I want to try and leave a footprint in Sky that's going to last, you know, and isn't just going to kind of blow away with the first winds of change. And that actually it's going to keep the business on a course for a long period of time. So it's a mixture, I think, of a sort of a very kind of corporate financial motivation around, you know, stewardship of the business, but also thinking that more broadly and what I want to achieve at a personal level as well.
You want to leave a small footprint.
A small footprint, yes, yeah. An efficient footprint, perhaps.
So, I mean, how much of it do you really feel like you own, though? Because obviously we know that James Murdoch was very allied to, you know, a low-carbon strategy, decarbonisation, all those kind of things that he was passionate about. I mean, was that one of the, you know, when you went for your interview, did you have an interview? Is that what they wanted to know? Were you going to carry that on?
I mean, we talked about, you know, when I joined Sky, which was predominantly through conversations with James, who just joined the business at the time. We talked a lot about, you know, long-term what we wanted to achieve and what we wanted the business to become. And much of that journey was started in James' tenure as CEO, and then hopefully I've taken that on and built and extended that. But actually at Sky, we're not, you know, I think we're our best as a business is as a team. And so I don't think that you want to have this program, you know, it's not a CEO vanity project, right? It's not one person. It's all of us, actually. And I think that's really, really important. So absolutely, as the leader of the business, I own it, I lead it, I front much of it, you know, much of the driving motivation behind it, but I'm only one part of that. And I mean, you'll meet many people from Sky today, and hopefully you'll get a sense when you meet them of their own, you know, personal commitment. And that's important because I think that's where you really start to really seed long-term change. I mean, that's how you can really start to drive change in the business. And one of the things that I've been probably initially a bit surprised at, but pleasantly surprised, is how our whole approach to sustainability and how we run our business in the broader sense has really resonated internally. And I think staff have really understood it very simply and got behind it. And that's not that surprising. You know, if you're one of the 23,000 people that work for Sky today, you know, you're probably fairly reasonably concerned about the economy and the future and what's happening, you know, and you want to see a business that's thinking about the long term and thinking about being here in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years' time, as opposed to, you know, just purely what, you know, the next quarter sales numbers are going to be.
Can you give me an example of that, where that top-down strategy has been enthusiastically embraced?
Well, I mean, I can give you a couple. I mean, I think that, I mean, the whole programme around the environment very much so has been the case. I mean, a lot of the thinking and the projects that we've driven have really come from within. So probably the single biggest thing that we've done is really changing our approach into the equipment that we put in customers' homes. So our set-top box that goes into the television. And you know, a few years ago, that used to break down. You know, it could break down 1 in 5 times. Right? You sort of look at that and think, that's how after 20 years of operation can that still be the case? And why are we accepting that degree of failure? But actually, you know, there was in the business a whole load of engineers who could see the inefficiency, the waste behind that, could connect it to our environmental footprint, who understood very simply that rolling a truck to go and fix these things, you know, was not good customer service and certainly wasn't good for the environment. And from that emerged a program to say, we're going to change this. Right? We're going to be the generation that changes this. Today, if you take the HD box we put in customers' homes, you know, the latest boxes have got a failure rate of less than 0.5%. Now, that's contributed hugely to our business. Right? We've reduced, despite growing, we've reduced our absolute service visits by probably a half. It probably saves us about £70 million a year. You apply a multiple onto that, that's a lot of value you've created. But actually it's very aligned to our whole environmental programme as well. So that's a particularly good example. I think another example is something like volunteering. You know, where we've got, I think around 10% of our employees now are actually spending a day out working in local communities, and that's resonated very strongly, particularly in a lot of our customer-facing areas. And so if you find these things that people can kind of get a hold of, you know, they can start to scale quite quickly.
Do you do volunteering?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. We did. We went. So we go to Ostley to local schools or to the local park there and do some work there. I also try and do work in schools in terms of talking to kids. So I can play my part in it as well. But as I say, it's important, I think, to make sure that you don't think of it as just the sort of CEO project. It's important that you think of it.
You're very uncomfortable with that idea of a vanity project. I mean, you're almost sort of phobic about it.
Yeah, probably.
What's going on? I'm the agony aunt. You can tell me what's happening.
Well, it's just because I don't think durable success really comes from there, and I think as a leader, I think a lot of old leadership models was the classic pyramid, right? So, you define yourself at the top, everybody else is below yourself, your job's to call the shots, and I'd sort of kind of reject that, Actually, I think much better is to try and think of yourself in the business, or indeed, enabling the business. It's just numbers, right? If you can get 23,000 people to do something and you can help them do something, that's going to create a lot more than trying to influence the very top of the organisation. I've got 11, 12 people who work for me directly, right? So let's say I can double their performance, right? Okay, I've got 12 extra people, right? If I can actually improve the performance of 23,000 people, right, then that's going to be a much, much bigger impact in terms of what we can do as a business. So I think how you approach that and how you think about that's quite important.
It's not just numbers, though, is it? Because if you look at, perception is very, very important. Management Today said in 2011, Sky has a problem, it's perception-based. They remain elements of society for whom it is as unloved as Tesco, sorry if you're from Tesco, to be discussed. But there is a sense that some of this, some of these schemes, some of these ideas are to prove that perception is wrong and to maybe harness the liberal chatterati, as they've been called. So maybe sustainability, some people might fear that sustainability falls into that, along with arts programming, for example. Is that a ploy to get the liberal chatterati involved in Sky?
Well, I think that's the first time we've ever been accused of trying to harness the liberal chatterati. So, no. Look, I think that our job is to get out and show what we do as a business, right? To be clear on what we're trying to achieve, and then to try and explain that and be transparent with people around what we're trying to achieve. Point one. Two, we want to align what we do with our customers. We're a paid-for subscription business. It's very, very important, obviously, that we continue to deliver for our customers. So our motivation in the arts, for example, is a customer motivation. We got into that because we believed that customers were being underserved in an area of programming, and we could build a position out of that. Now, from that, the arts is an area that, well, we can play a bigger role corporately in terms of either sponsorship or support of some of the arts. So Doug Aitken, who you saw in the video, we sponsored a major artworks in the Tate Modern at Liverpool. We also work at the grassroots level supporting young artists. And I think it's good for us if customers see us, as a big business in the arts, also contributing more broadly. So to me, these things fit very, very well together. But they're not about, just trying to convince a few people in West London. I think that for a business of our size, that would be,
It's always West. You mean Chiswick, don't you? It's Chiswick. All right. And I live there. Yes, that's fine. So it's not. So the sustainability work that you do, it's not something that when operating conditions, if they became even tougher, it's not something that's going to be jettisoned. It is there. It is core. You are committed to it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely is. Because I think it's a big consumer business. And we can see it. Look, we can see it. We can see how our approach resonates with our customers, how they can, they start to think differently about our brand and about our business. And success for us is not about just the short term, it's about the long term. And actually, I think where Sky has always been at its best is about thinking really long term, and often being willing to bet and invest with a very long-term mindset as part of that. So I see it as a core part of our success over time. So it's certainly not it's not something that's just there for the short term. And look, we'll be judged on that. I mean, at the end of the day, people will look at what we do, and rightly they will apply their judgments according to what we do.
I just want to pick up on something that you mentioned, which was when you know, when the quarterly profit statement is announced, that everybody will ask you questions about that, and nobody will focus on durability and the long term. Is there a way that you wish that sustainability could be reported? Let's talk about the technical aspect of reporting it and how you manage that, how you message to different stakeholders and different communities what you're doing in this sector. That we give it more impetus.
I'm not so sure. I mean, look, I think you've just got to, a little bit, you've just got to get on the stump and just sell it and explain it. I mean, actually, I have to say, one of the things that I've found is when you go and talk to shareholders and you explain what we're doing and why we're doing it, they really get it, actually, and they're big supporters of our approach. And if you're a big shareholder in Sky, then it should be important to you, and I think it is important to you. So I think it's just more a job that we've got to get out and explain what we do. And my experience is when we do that is that people respond to it pretty well, actually.
OK, let's just talk a little bit about shareholders, one shareholder in particular. I'm sure you knew this was coming. And reputation. A lot of this area, it's, you know, corporate governance and building trust in the company and changing, you know, perceptions of Sky, and good work has been done. And then there's the reputational Armageddon, really, which was inflicted on the company by your major shareholder. So how do you deal with that? How do you come back from that?
Well, look, first of all, in terms of our major shareholder, you know, News have been a very, very big supporter of our business from day one. Actually, have been the longest holder of Sky of anybody. They believed in this business more than anybody else, and have been and are continue to be big supporters of our whole approach and our approach in this area. I think when you get a sort of lot of noise around the business, there's two or three things that become important. First of all, it's important, I think, not to get blown off course. And I think one of the things that we've done pretty well over the last few years is stay very, very focused on our plan and understood that the job of management is to really execute that and not to be buffeted, if you like, by a lot of the sort of noise out there. And our experience has been that, you know, for customers, actually our businesses continue to go from success to success. You know, we've more people have joined Sky and continue to join Sky. And our existing customers are both loyal but also want to take more products and services from us. Now, it's certainly true that if you look at, you know, you take an individual part of the media, then that might get overblown. So we just need to get out there and, as I say, make our case. I think step into the debate and explain what we're about. Then I think if we do that and we execute consistently, then ultimately people will recognise that.
What was the impact from your point of view?
Well, in terms of the business, really not at all, to be honest with you. Actually, the business, you know, if anything, outperformed over that period of time. Right at the start, I can remember sitting down with the team and saying, look, it's pretty simple for us, you know, in this whole process, which is, you know, the questions for the management never really change, right? The questions are, how are we going to build this business? How are we going to grow it? And at some point, around the bid that never was, either somebody will have come and News will have come in and acquired us, or a whole set of shareholders will have turned down quite a lot of money for us. The questions they will ask us will be exactly the same. So I think one of the things that we did well was we maintained that focus rate throughout the period. And as I say, I think, you know, what I learned over that period is that when there's a lot of noise surrounding the business, is that things that are sort of normally stable get destabilised a bit, and then you just need to put them back together, and then off you go. But the business is, you know, is bigger and I think better than it's ever been.
Have you got one of those teacups, keep calm and carry on?
No, my daughter actually gave me one of those posters, so I've got that in my study at home. Yeah.
I knew where that ethos
I don't think she was referring to the bid, though. I think she was referring to her homework. It's probably more likely.
You just talked briefly about customers and expectations and, you know, winning them on side and offering them, you know, X, Y, Z and such a compelling offer that they can't really walk away. I just want to talk to you about the politics of limits, because that's what we come up a lot in sustainability. Is there ever a case when 3D, HD, smell-o-vision, whatever it is that you're offering, that we're going to have to say, no, dear consumer, we can't have that. It's just, it's too energy inefficient, it's too demanding, and we're going to have to say no to consumers?
Well, look, I think there are always limits, certainly. Absolutely, if we looked at lots of initiatives we choose not to pursue as a business for a variety of reasons. I mean, I would hope that if something was purely on its efficiency, you know, we would work to find a way to solve that problem. So the question, I think, in the business is less about saying we're absolutely not going to reject that. The question is, how do we find a different way to do something that is better? But there are always limits in the business. There's always limits on growth. I mean, one of the things, for example, we know in our business is that if we push too hard in the short term, you know, the customer joins us. If they're not really committed to Sky, the chances are they're going to churn away fairly quickly. So we try, for example, to make sure that the customer always, you know, pays something when they join us, you know, because we know that's the biggest single sign of their commitment. And actually, it's in nobody's interest, it seems to me, for us to acquire a customer, you know, to roll a truck, to put equipment into their home, and then for 2 months later for them to decide that the service isn't really for them or they can't afford it. So, you know, we try and avoid that. So, yeah, we think very hard about all of those things, because I think the business is always about choices and trade-offs, and you know, you have to recognise that.
And how do you feel about the financial pressure that it puts some consumers under? Because they will do anything, you know, to get there. When times are incredibly tough, they will do anything to pay for their Sky subscription.
Well, a lot. You know, we've got, I mean, we are by our nature, we're a subscription business, so we've got almost 11 million homes. And what we want to do is we want to keep those homes repeating. We want them to keep with us. And you're absolutely right. You know, there's a very strong free alternative in the UK. So for us, we have to provide a service that is worth paying for over and above what's freely available. And so we think a lot about how much we invest in the service, obviously what we charge for it. I would much prefer to see a consumer right-sized and take the right amount of products from us than sort of being forced to take more, if you like, and then not being stable. But, you know, we're also an incredibly good value business. You know, as a choice to how you entertain your family, you know, Sky, relative to the choices that you can make, is incredible value for money. I mean, I read this morning, was it Facebook are going to charge for you to access somebody who's not one of your friends, and if you're a celebrity, you know, was it £10? Well, you know, 3 of those you can have Sky for a month. So, you know, I think a lot of this stuff is relative, right? And actually, I think one of the reasons we've been successful is actually we've got a sort of mix of quality and value right over time. But it's a very important part of what we think about.
I've slightly lost contact with Facebook. I just walked away from it at some point. So you can pay a fee to contact a celebrity.
Yeah, I think it was Facebook, wasn't it?
Oh.
Was it? Yeah.
Maybe I'll rejoin. Sounds compelling. I wanted to talk to you. I can go either way at this point. I just want to drill down a little bit about the fundamentals of energy efficiency here. Do you ever wake up and think, oh my God, you know, we've got these huge satellites, they've got 11 million people with all these set-top boxes, and the demands, the power demands of this business are extraordinary. You know, we are, you know, facing increasingly desperate measures when it comes to energy and power usages and our choices around that. Do you ever feel that kind of sense of responsibility, and what do you do about it?
Well, you feel a sense of responsibility every day across everything that we do. I mean, actually, I would challenge a little bit your the sort of preconception that relative to the services that we deliver, we are a hugely energy consumptive business. Of course, it takes a huge amount of energy to get the satellite up into the orbit. But, you know, once it's there, it stays for a long, long period of time. One of the great things we can do with the satellite is we can actually beam down, you know, to the entire country from one place. So it's a very efficient way to deliver the sort of services that we deliver. Now, of course, as you get into, you know, the other footprint of the business, whether it's our operational footprint day to day, you know, we consume energy there. We've worked hard at driving the efficiency of that. And then in the home, through a set-top box, we've reduced the consumption of the set-top box by about 50% over the last few years. So, yes, we think about those. Actually, the motivation for thinking about a lot of those things is often a business motivation, because typically if you can cut consumption of resources, that's good for business as well as being good for the environment. And increasingly as we distribute our content in new ways, much of that is being delivered over the top of the existing infrastructures. So today we're delivering to mobile phones over the top of mobile networks. We're delivering over the top of broadband networks. And that means that we're not having to go out and dig the roads and put new infrastructure in place. We're able to use other investments that have already been made for other purposes to get our product to more people.
Okay, because I have actually been asked to my ethical agony aunt column by a reader, is it more energy efficient to get TV provided by a satellite company or cable provider?
Well, I don't precisely know the answer to that question, but I think what you've seen with satellite throughout the world is it's been probably the most efficient platform, I think, to deliver television to many homes. Typically, where cable networks are better is more for one-to-one communication, where you're connecting within a smaller piece of content or an individual website. But where you're actually broadcasting to many homes at the same time, doing it from the big bird in the sky is a pretty good way to do it.
The big bird. But a lot of this is new, isn't it? So these are new facilities and appetites that people have. It's not just we're displacing some energy use with some equivalent energy use. A lot of this is new and added on. That's probably what I meant. Does that sit? Well,
look, I mean, some of it is, but also we're an open platform, so we don't just broadcast Sky's channels. We broadcast. Anybody who wants to broadcast a channel can do that over our satellite platform. So all of the free-to-air broadcasters, for example, broadcast to all of their license fee, or many of their license fee payers, 40% of their license fee payers, using the Sky infrastructure. And so, because we're open access, we're accessible essentially to everybody. So this is not something that's just for what we do. It's also for what many people do as well. And there are a lot of social benefits that flow from it. I mean, quite apart from the window to the world that we provide our customers. I mean, if you think of the events in in Syria, or if you look at David Attenborough and the Galapagos, or if we think of what's going on in North Korea today, or some great sports events somewhere in the world. This is providing entertainment and information and enrichment to many people that they previously didn't have to the same extent. And that's a really good thing, I think. It's all part of providing a better product for customers that I think enriches their lives and socially is good.
How did you get David Attenborough? That's such a good steal.
Well, there are some decisions in the business that don't take you very long, and that was one of them. And it was interesting. I think one of the reasons David wanted to come and work with Sky was because of the work we were doing. Actually, around services like high definition and 3D, the early part of his career had been launching colour television and bringing BBC Two to the UK. So I think that was a good example of why we were able to attract him to Sky, and of course he's been brilliantly successful. We're very lucky to work with him. I
just want to talk to you actually about content. Sustainability, green issues. Does that have a place in content? Because obviously you have the best platform to get this out to millions of viewers in a very straightforward way. You could just put more shows on about it.
I think so. I think as long as the work we do broadly in sustainability is relevant. I mean, to your first point, it's not trying to speak to what do you say it was, the liberal Chatterati? Yes.
Chiswick.
So in Chiswick, yeah. So as long as it's relevant, I think, then it will do. And the reason is I think it'll have a big overlap. So if you take the environment as one example, but you could take sport. If you take the work we're doing around school sports, for example, or opening up opportunities for new athletes, those sorts of things, these actually make very powerful television programs. So they fit very closely with what we do, and often they present Sky in a different light. So people will see us perhaps differently to the way they think about us before. So not in the environment, for example. Just an example. The other day I was in the gym. And we had Sky Sports. Sky Sports News was on in the gym, and I was chatting to one of the the trainers there who didn't know what I did, and we happened to be watching a piece of footage we were running on Sky Sports News, which was a disabled football game. And it was basically, it was Newcastle, which is my hometown, which is why I was watching it, playing disabled football against a bunch of disabled kids, and some of the players were in disabled wheelchairs, and this game was going on, and we were showing it on Sky Sports News. And so we happened both to be watching it, and I said to him, I said, you know, Newcastle are a really good football club because they do a lot of this stuff. And he said to me, he said, Sky are really good, you know, because they cover a lot of this stuff and sponsor it. They're not just a big business. So, you know, that's a very small example, right? But it's a good example, I think, of a snapshot of content that we happened to be cover for Sports News because we thought it was an interesting story. It fitted very well with our narrative around business, around sport and inclusion, and actually could show Sky in a slightly different way to, you know, one of these guys who was a personal trainer, big interest in sport, and watched the channel, you know, a lot during the day. So I can think it can hit both levels. You know, it can be very good TV, and it can also, you know, just open up a little bit a lot of the work that we're trying to do.
What do people normally say when they find out what you do? Incidentally, like that.
I mean, look.
What's the most common response?
Most people say, "Go, really? You're a, you know, I mean, look, I'm a lucky guy, right? I have an interesting job. Every day at Sky is interesting. Something happens, and a lot of the areas that we work in, you know, are whether it be sport, whether it be entertainment, movies, our broadband business, are all fascinating. So, and I'm constantly reminded that we are a big footprint business today. You know, we pretty much everybody in the UK and Ireland has got a view about Sky. Right? They've got an opinion, good and bad. So we're a business that's often talked about, which is great.
Especially in Ireland, because it's more expensive, isn't it?
It's a little bit more expensive in Ireland, yes, that's true.
Bit of knowledge there. Right, lots of family there. Okay, so I just not quite finished with content yet. So we are in this environmental imperative state. Yeah. You want to get the message out. You know, we're talking about, despite all these kind of dynamic sustainability initiatives all over the world, the situation is worsening, you know, resource depletion, pollution, all the rest of it. So is it not incumbent upon you to go to your brilliant commissioners, you know, Sophie... Is it Tony Lang and Stuart Murphy? You know, got these brilliant people, and say, right, we need to get series out about this subject. We need to change the way that people do things. We need to push this green content through. Because that would be just such an immediate platform.
So look, I think the answer is more. It works in reverse. It actually works. The dynamic works the other way. So actually, what the commissioners do is they identify this as a rich area that we can tap into. They understand, and they're pretty smart, that it goes with the grain of the business, and then they come up with ideas. So whether it be taking Lily Cole to the Amazon, whether it be David Attenborough in the Galapagos, whether it be the Sports News guys, you know, thinking about you know, sport and participation. You know, whether it be the arts guys covering, you know, Doug Aitken, whatever that is, they will actually, what happens is the dynamic it tends to be reversed, and they will see this as an opportunity to create content and programming that can work very well on their channels, and then, you know, up it will come.
Only if it's entertaining.
Yeah, of course.
Not if it's didactic, even if that was a good way of getting it.
Well, you know, I think it's just
across.
That would just be a false choice, right? There's no reason why it can't be entertaining, and it can't do both of those things. And actually, you know, it should do. You know, we should be able to provide programming that's informative and entertaining at the same time, I think.
Let's just talk a little bit about a sort of wider view of sustainability. There's lots of dynamic ideas, lots of big ideas around, you know, like, you know, net positive and, you know, ways of messaging those ideas. Are there any other CEOs that you talk to or notice what they're doing, or any of this work, any of these innovations that you find kind of interesting?
Well, look, I think I'll come and answer that in a second. But I think first and foremost, I think we don't particularly look, you know, at any other sort of business or organisation for sort of leadership in that sense. You know, we try and set our own standards, and I'm actually a big believer in that. You know, we're responsible for our business, and we want to set our own course, and I think that's quite important. I think motivation fundamentally has to come from within. That said, of course, you look elsewhere and say, where are the good ideas? I sit on the board of M&S. I think M&S have done a fantastic job around Plan A, and I've seen that. I've been on the board for 7 years now, so I've seen that from inception all the way through, how it's transitioned from one CEO to another, and the work they're doing. And actually, we've got close relationships with M&S, and we can learn from each other. So I think you can look at sort of stimuli, motivation, and idea generation, if you like, from lots of different places. But I think the direction has to come from inside the business itself, and that's really where the motivation is.
When you compare to M&S, because obviously you know what they've done quite well, you're quite familiar with it, do you think that broadcast was a little bit slow to the sustainability table in some ways?
I think perhaps in some ways it's a little bit harder to get your hands around it in broadcast, because a lot of what we do, a lot of the products that we supply, if you like, it's IP, right? It's ones and zeros. It's not fish or clothing or whatever food, which is a more physical product, and therefore in some respects I think it's easier to bring that to life. So I think that's been it's probably a little bit more of a challenge, and I think with retailers probably consumers get it a little bit easier than with something like a media company. But actually, we can use that to our advantage, because I think that sometimes when we do things that are a little bit different, they provide important points of reappraisal. So. That's the skill, I think, is to try and think about it that way. So, what's a good example? I often think, Sky Sports. Sport is something which is associated with Sky, and we can do lots of things in sport. But if you then look at the work we've done around cycling, well, we've really tried to work and partner a sport there wasn't one of the big sports in the UK, and say what we're going to do is we're going to work right throughout the sport, both at the grassroots level, trying to inspire more people to get onto their bikes and cycle regularly, to support the elite programme in the UK, and to create Team Sky to go and try and win the Tour de France. And then create positive role models and positive stories on the back of that. People stand back at that because they see that as unusual, and that's not what they expect. So I think you've got to try and take difference and say this is a way that we can actually get greater reappraisal from people, but you have to work a bit harder, I think, to make that happen, because you're slightly going against the grain.
In terms of your Sky's environmental work, have you done any of those sort of field trips? Have you had your huskies in the Antarctic kind of moment?
I haven't. I've not been to the Antarctic. I've been to the Arctic, but I've not been to the Antarctic, and I haven't yet been to Brazil, I'm afraid.
You haven't been to the rainforest?
It was one of the things that got, I was going to say blown up, to get blown up.
It didn't get blown up, don't worry.
It was a casualty of actually the big process. I was going to go and then I couldn't in the end. So, but I will get there, yeah.
Is that important to you to do that sort of stuff?
Oh, it's certainly that sort of thing. To actually go and look at, like anything, to look on the ground and see what's happening, I think brings it to life. As all parts of the business are, and you want to go and touch it. And it's also interesting. It's a good chance to go and see in detail what we do. Is it important to the programme? Yeah, to an extent, I think, but it's not fundamental to the programme.
Is it, again, it's one of those things that makes you feel a bit uncomfortable?
I wouldn't say
you go in disguise.
Yes. No, I wouldn't say it makes you uncomfortable. But look, as probably with any CEO of a major business, there are lots and lots of sort of demands of your time. So, you pick those off when you can.
How much of your time do environmental issues get? How much of your time as a CEO?
Look, I don't have a number off the top of my head. I mean, not a huge number. We've got an environmental steering group across the business, which I chair. That meets at least quarterly, normally every couple of months. There may be certain decisions and issues that suck up more of my time. So right now, we're developing our campus at Sky. We started that by building a studios building, which took a lot of time in terms of design and some of the things that we built in terms of its own environmental footprint and sustainability. We're now extending that to the balance of our campus, so that'll take quite a bit of time. But as I say, we're not a particularly big energy or carbon footprint business, so on a day-to-day basis, it doesn't take an enormous amount of time.
Now, I know other people will have questions. I know one person had a question. I just want to ask you a question from Ian Westron from Boots, who couldn't be here this evening. Ian would like to know, why does Sky force sporting events to be played at times that force the use of high-powered artificial lighting? Surely this is contributing to more carbon than the amount saved by their own operation.
Okay. Well, first of all, we don't force sporting events to be played at any time. That is the domain of the sports governing bodies. Now, we will work with them, obviously, to make sure that their interest will be getting their events at times that resonate with, with their fan base and supporter base, which will be our customer base. So, of course, if you look at something like, I don't know, Monday Night Football on Sky Sports, that's an evening kick-off, and through the season is going to be played under floodlights. That will be the same with the Champions League. But that's not a particular change. That's been the case, as long as I can remember. Sometimes around sporting events there are issues around policing, for example, which we need to work around and work with the police forces to make sure that's right. So, for example, it's very difficult to have a local derby on a Saturday evening for obvious reasons, so they have to be scheduled away from that. And then there's just management of the fixture programme generally.
But the fact you can't have the derby in the evening, that would please Ian, but he's, how have you thought, have you considered how power hungry those floodlit matches are? You don't sit there thinking, oh my God, this is...
Well, look, first and foremost, our job is to provide a service that customers want. So we're going to be customer driven in terms of doing that, right? We're going to try and do that in as efficient a way as possible. But, for us, running the Manchester Derby at 1:30 on a Wednesday afternoon probably isn't going to work, right? Because it's not going to work for our customers. But importantly, it's not going to work for either Man United or Man City either. So, we have to find times where the product that we produce fits with customers' needs, and that will mean from time to time a lot of sporting events are going to be done in the evening because that's when people have free time.
The politics of limits doesn't extend that far. We can't reschedule matches.